As of today, the TS43X has been live for 1 week now, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't think we were going to sell quite as many as we have so far. And because of that, I definitely owe you guys at least one more video on this thing. What's going on, everyone? My name is Talon Sai and you are watching Sunday GUNDAY. I hope you guys are all having a great Sunday so far. Today we are going to be taking a closer look at my signature pistol build right here, the TS43X. This video is of course coming out after the release, so if you have not checked out the release video, I highly recommend watching that video first. I will leave a link for it right up here in the corner and in the description down below. I answered pretty much everything in that video. You can also find this information over on my website or Danger Close Armaments website. And this video is basically going to be more of a sit-down, casual talk about what went into the TS43X. And this is essentially going to serve as my review of my own signature pistol. I do have a few very important housekeeping items which we will get to by the end of this video. If you did place an order or if you're thinking about placing an order, all that information is very important. But for now, let's just answer some of the common questions about the TS43X. So the first thing that I want to say, and I cannot stress this enough, is that a platform like this is not for everyone. If anything, it's just for me because I designed every aspect of this gun. That being said though, there are some people whose tastes and preferences definitely line up with mine, and that is of course why we are producing these and selling them. Now I think this discussion is directly related to price. However, there are basically two different sides. There is one person who is like, there's no way, that's too expensive, I would rather just shoot my stock gun. And to that, I agree with. I also like stock firearms. And then there's the other side. There's a person who's like, nah, that's too expensive. I would rather just have my stock Glock 43X and then pay for training. And to that, I also agree with. I think that is a way better way to spend your money. Now, I'm saying that a platform like this is really not for anyone because if you are in those first two boats, then it makes sense to spend your money elsewhere. However, I was in both of those boats already. I enjoyed carrying a stock firearm, and early on I never really understood the benefits of something like this. And then I was in the boat of like, okay, I really like my stock firearm, now instead of just modifying it, I'm going to get more training. So then I basically took the next step and I was like, okay, well, I like my stock firearm and I shoot it pretty well. And then I got training, so I'm shooting my stock firearm really proficiently. What's the next thing that could sort of take my shooting to the next level? And that's where modifying a gun actually comes into play. Now I know for a lot of people who watch my channel, most people aren't like heavily into training. They're not going to multiple training events every year, and because of that, I would say that this gun is not for most people. That being said though, there are those select few who do take training seriously, and once you become a very proficient shooter, then you can actually start to benefit from a modified gun like this. If a brand new shooter walks up to me and I have a completely stock Glock 43X and then I have a TS43X, I would put both of those guns in their hand. One of them might feel better than the other. I would bet and say that this one feels a little bit better in their hand. However, just because it feels better doesn't mean it's going to make them a better shooter at all. They might be surprised and actually shoot a stock Glock 43X better than this thing. It all of course does come down to personal tastes and preferences, but once that person who was a new shooter shoots more and gets some training and they have a better foundation to build on top of, then they will start to see the benefits of a platform like this. Now, while we're on the topic of price, let's actually do a cost breakdown of a gun like this. I think this is important to be transparent and basically explain how customizing a firearm works for anyone who might be new to this. This not only goes for a package like this, but almost any gun that you are going to customize from top to bottom. So using my TS43X as the example, we have an optic version, the RMSC. This exact configuration right here is coming in at $19.99. Now, what do you get in this package? Of course, you have the brand new Glock 43X. And for the record, I'm going to be using list pricing as I'm finding this online right now. On top of that, we have the Shield RMSC, and we have Ameriglow blacked out sights to go with that. We have an Apex drop-in trigger kit. And then we have a few odds and ends like the case and patches and packing material and everything else that goes into actually getting these guns out the door. I decided to add a few little extras in there to make the buying experience just a little more personal. So there in parts alone, we're already looking at just over $1,000. Now for everything else that is going into this build over at Danger Close Armament. We of course have the slide milling package. This is going to vary depending on what you're actually doing to the gun. Some places are going to be more expensive, some places are going to be less expensive. But I will say that it's not a good idea to cheap out on getting a slide milled. So for this exact version, we have my signature slide milling package, which I designed, and then we have it black nitride coated and also cut for the RMSC. And then moving down to the frame, we have the full signature frame package, which includes a lot of different things like the undercut trigger guard, the tang shaping, which is my favorite thing about this gun. And then we have the tungsten Cerakote, making it a dual tone frame with two different textures, being less aggressive on the side and more aggressive in the front and the rear. So you add all of that stuff up, you're of course paying for Danger Close Armament's time to actually modify the pistol and get it into a configuration like this, and you're left with a total that looks something like that right there. So that is a very quick and direct way to explain this, but that is where the value of something like this comes out. And again, it's not for everyone. Not everyone is going to find value in all of the modifications done to a pistol like this. But for me, since I'm the one who designed it, it's 100% there. So all of that being said, what did I actually do to this gun to make it more tailored for my preferences? The first thing is of course on top with the RMSC. So just like I mentioned in the original release video, I prefer all of my guns to be mounted up with a red dot optic. With something like this RMSC, you're going to have faster target acquisition. A lot of times you're going to be more accurate once you get out to a further distance. This particular model is the 4 MOA dot. They do make these with an 8 MOA dot, however I find that to be a little bit too big, which is why I landed on the smaller 4 MOA version. Now I'm the type of person who, when I put a red dot on a firearm, I rely on that thing. When I put the RMSC on here, there are no switches on there. The battery is found in the bottom there, and this thing is always on and it's constantly adjusting. It's really bright outside right now, so when I look through and get a good sight picture, it's clear as day. This thing is nice and bright. Even when I point at a very sunlit, blown out object like a white target, I can still see that dot very clearly, and this is something that I rely on. Now I'm not relying on this optic to a point where I forget how to shoot with iron sights. I of course shoot with irons every once in a while, and if the optic ever does go down for some reason, I want to have irons there as a backup. Now there are some people who are 100% relying on optics, and I'm not quite there yet, actually mounting up an RMR or an RMSC or any kind of red dot on a pistol and then not having any backup iron sights. I don't trust them quite that much yet. Although there are some people who can actually shoot right through the glass without a dot. And in most cases, an everyday carry self-defense situation, you're gonna be shooting up really close, and a lot of times you're point shooting, you're shooting from retention. There's so many different ways this discussion could go, but I'm not one who relies 100% on a red dot optic, but I like it to be there 99% of the time. That being said, in that 1% or even less than 1% where this optic is not working for some reason, I really like the RMSC because I can actually see these blacked out iron sights through it. Now right here you can sort of get an idea of the sight picture. Of course, you're not really going to be picking up that red dot all that well because of the focus of the camera, but as you can see, those shorter iron sights are visible right through the glass window of the RMSC. I say glass, but technically it's a quartz-coated polymer. So I chose this exact sight configuration because one, I always like shooting with the red dot, so I went with the RMSC. It fits the gun perfectly, and it also allows you to basically co-witness with these blacked out iron sights in here. I opted for these over anything with dots or tritium in them because I believe that they become a little bit too intrusive then. If you're shooting a red dot with tritium in the rear and the front sight post, then you have 4 different dots that you're sort of staring at when you're looking at your target, and it just becomes a little bit overkill in my opinion. Now from there, we're moving down to the slide. This is something that I of course designed myself by hand, and because of that I'm very biased when I say this slide looks really good, but it's also functional. Like I mentioned in the previous video, we did design this thing to look pretty good, but the first and foremost thing that I was concentrating on was the function of the gun. Now with that design, I also opted for ports because not only is it going to lighten up the slide a little bit, but it's gonna give you way more purchase on the front there, while looking pretty damn good at the same time. Now, a standard Glock 43 is inherently pretty snappy. It's a very small grip with a small slide. It's tracking pretty quickly. So then when Glock released the 43X, it became way more controllable because you have almost a full-size grip here. I'm willing to bet that almost anyone will shoot a Glock 43X better than a Glock 43 just because you have more of a full-handed grip on the gun. Now, that being said, a standard 43 became more controllable because of this longer grip, so because you have a better purchase on here, you can put down follow-up shots quicker. I decided that, hey, it might not be a bad idea to lighten up the slide just a little bit and get that thing cycling just a little bit faster. For the most part, the slide milling package done to this is, of course, for grip, which this thing is plenty grippy no matter where you're putting your hand on the slide. But it's also shedding weight, allowing this thing to cycle a little bit quicker and a little bit flatter, as long as you have that good fundamental shooting platform. Now, inside the slide here, we of course have a standard Glock marksman barrel. While I have the slide off, this is actually where you are going to find your serial number. If you did pick one of these up, it is etched right there on the inside of the gun. So this right here is a completely standard Glock barrel for the 43X. The reason I didn't go with anything different is because, from my experience, this is completely adequate for an everyday carry gun. Could I have went with an option that is threaded? Sure, but do you really want to suppress a tiny little Glock 43X as an EDC gun? Not really. Could I have went with something with a different coating, maybe like some flutes in the barrel, titanium nitride, add a little bling to it? Sure, but again, this gun was built for function, not to be blingy and Gucci. And then finally, do you actually see any performance benefits out of a drop-in barrel? Something maybe that's even hand fit. The average shooter is honestly not going to see a huge difference with a barrel like that. I'm gonna say that 9 times out of 10, the shooter is never proficient enough to actually outshoot the barrel, especially on a tiny, small package of a Glock 43X like this. Sure, we could have added another $200 to the cost and then more people wouldn't like the price. But again, I designed this gun for myself and I know that I'm not a good enough shooter where I'm going to see a drastic benefit of adding a drop-in barrel in there, so I don't think most people will either. On paper, at like 7 to 10 yards, you should be getting some pretty decent sized groupings, and I really don't think you're gonna see any benefits out of a drop-in barrel unless you're shooting back from even further than that. It's just an added cost that I don't think was necessary, and if you want to upgrade that, that's something that you can do. Now, that being said, where I do believe there could be a little bit more improvement for the shooter was, of course, the trigger. Now, the Glock 43X trigger is not terrible. Some people just don't like Glock triggers altogether. I don't find them to be all that bad. I would say that they are adequate. But when you upgrade to a full drop-in trigger kit like the Apex trigger right here, the benefits definitely become apparent. Now, one thing that is important to me with an everyday carry gun is that I am not modifying the actual trigger weight of the gun itself. Glocks are inherently safe because of their 3 different safety mechanisms, and I didn't want to jeopardize that at all. So the pull weight with this Apex trigger is roughly the same as a stock Glock trigger. However, it is much smoother and it even feels a little bit safer to me. I can feel that safety blade on the trigger a little bit better, and then you're greeted with that flat face of the shoe. There's much less grit compared to a stock trigger, and then once I get back to that wall, you get a very nice predictable break. The reset on these, very tactile and audible, just like a standard Glock trigger, and I believe I'm going to be putting Apex triggers in all of my guns from here on out. So now that brings us down to the frame. The frame package that we put on this gun is probably the thing that is going to be most apparent to people once they actually pick up this firearm. So if we put the looks aside, of course, we have the split texture and the 2-tone Cerakote. The one thing that might not be super apparent is the tang shaping that we did to the frame. I wish I had a completely stock Glock 43X to compare this next to, but essentially what they do is come up here and remove just a little bit of material from the underside, little beaver tail area of the gun, and that allows you to get a much higher and tighter grip on the pistol. I chose the 43X because of the small size but the larger grip, and doing this makes the grip feel even larger. Whenever I'm going to draw this gun from my holster, I can slam my hand down on that gun, get a positive master grip, and it is consistent every single time. I never really had issues with the stock gun, however, this definitely makes it feel much better and much more consistent when actually shooting it. So once I go in there and get that positive master grip on the gun, I have a more aggressive texture in the front and rear because that is where my hand is actually grabbing and gripping this gun. And then on the sides, we have this brain texture because whether you are right or left-handed, that is where this gun is going to be rubbing up against your skin, whether you are carrying appendix, carrying on your side, no matter where you have it. Now, the more aggressive texture on the front and the rear, this is something that we actually came up with just for my signature build. I sort of explained to the guys what I wanted. I wanted to keep that brain texture for the comfort when carrying, but I wanted something a bit more aggressive on the front and the rear, and we of course came up with this right here. So now we have that super high and tight purchase, we have some more grip where you're actually coming into contact with the gun, and then right here we have all of their typical signature framework. The trigger guard is brought up a little bit higher, that way my 3 remaining fingers can get up there even higher than it is when it is stock. And then we have this index point right underneath the trigger guard here for a support hand, and this thing just feels perfect to me. That's why I designed it like this, of course. I am really curious to hear some feedback from those of you who did purchase one of these out there. And I'm curious because everyone who I've handed this gun to thus far has been like, wow, that thing feels great in my hand, and that is exactly what I was going for. If a gun doesn't feel good in your hand right from when you pick it up, chances are you're not going to shoot it that well, and everything that we did to this gun just makes it feel right. And now that brings us down to the magazines, and this is actually a question that I've been getting pretty frequently. Everyone was curious as to why we went with the 2 10-round stock mags. It's simply because of the laws and the legalities around the United States. The standard 10-round mags that we are shipping these guns with are legal in a lot more places than, say, a 15-round mag is. So the whole reason we basically opted for the 10-round magazines is to make this available to more people than not. That being said though, I like capacity, so of course I'm going to opt for a metal 15-round mag. We didn't make this an option on the website simply for that reason, and also it would up the cost. Maybe not everyone wants a 15-round mag. I, of course, do, and I would highly recommend it if that is something that is allowed in your state. Now, that being said, this is, of course, my personal everyday carry gun, so because I'm using these metal 15-round mags, one thing that they recommend is upgrading your magazine catch. So what I did is simply swap this out for a metal one. There are a bunch of different companies out there who make different magazine catches for these guns, like Shield and Hive. The list goes on, and if you are thinking about running metal magazines in a polymer gun like this with a standard polymer catch, it's something to think about. So I believe that covers everything now from top to bottom on this gun, why we designed it the way that we did, and like I mentioned, this gun is absolutely not for everyone. However, I know there are some of you out there who has the same tastes and preferences as me, and I am pretty confident that you guys are going to love these guns as soon as they show up at your FFL. Now for the housekeeping items, there are a few things that I did want to talk about in regards to anyone who has ordered a TS43X, or if you're thinking about ordering one of these pistols and the entire package. Now, we made it very clear from the beginning that we are building the TS43Xs in a limited quantity, and I never gave a definite number. I didn't give that definite number because I didn't want to deter anyone from checking them out and possibly placing an order. I didn't want to make anyone feel like they were being rushed to order some of these. I thought we were going to be building enough to sort of keep them around for a while. However, you guys seem to love this gun right from the start, and we sold way more than I was originally thinking. So for full transparency, we are building 100 serialized TS43Xs. Technically 101, this being serial number 000, but from there we're going from 1 all the way up to 100, and we have already sold 50 on the first day of release. So I just wanted to give a huge thank you to everyone who has already placed an order. I was really not expecting them to go that quickly, and since last week we've already sold 20 more. So we've sold 70 of the 100 TS43Xs, and as of right now when I'm filming this video, there are 30 left. So as much as I didn't want to make anyone feel too rushed, it is sort of a little bit of a rush now. Once the serialized version of the TS43X is gone, they are going to be gone. Now, I'd also like to bring up the fact that this is a non-refundable deposit when you are thinking about purchasing one of these. We've put out a ton of information out there on Danger Close's website, on my website, the previous video, and now this video. Make sure you read everything that we have posted and make sure you watch all the videos all the way through, because these deposits are non-refundable. It's a 50-50 payment plan, so you're paying $50 up front to save your spot in line, and then once your gun is built and ready to be delivered, that remaining $50 balance will be collected. Danger Close Armament is also not accepting customer guns for this specific build because there are simply too many factors that go into a production like that. We want to make sure that we're bringing the best possible quality to these platforms. So because of that, the brand new gun and everything that you see here, the case and everything that you saw in the previous video as well, is all included with the order, but we will not be accepting customer guns. Now, if you are one of the first 70 people who have placed an order for a TS43X, you should now be able to find a list of builds that are scheduled for the current month over on Danger Close's website. You can also find a link to it over on my website, which I will leave in the description down below. Basically, all you need to know is your order number, so you can go over to their website, find the product page, and check out the list of order numbers that are scheduled to be built that month. If you see your order number on there, then your gun is already being built and it should be shipped to you fairly soon. And if not, then hopefully you are next in line for the next month of builds. It's really hard to give an exact time frame or lead time for all of the orders that are being placed. However, I can say that if you are even the last person to order and you're getting serial number 100 of the TS43X, you can expect a gun to be delivered in roughly 6 months from the time the order is placed. If you got in before that, then you can expect something even sooner. I do know that the first 10 production guns are already being built and you should be finding them at your FFLs sooner than later, so I'm stoked to report that. Now, I know that was a ton of information. I really hope I covered everything. If you guys have any more questions, please let me know in the comments down below, or just check back to watch the previous video, or check my website, or Danger Close Armament. I think we got everything covered now, and I am stoked to hear the feedback from all of you who have placed an order for the TS43X. I really can't thank you guys enough. So now, if you are new to the channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week, and as always, thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you in the next one.